More new numbers from the POTUS trail, and shocker, the American public finds a matchup between Hillary and Donald Trump to be stunningly boring, either because both are universally hated or both sides are fearing a blowout come November. So let's spin the big prize wheel for talk about the newest shock word from the various candidates, rigging, as in the primaries, for which there is no evidence and everybody is playing by the rules, except for one state where the feds are mighty interested in what happened last month. What's happening in America when it comes to equal pay for the same amount of work? Why is it 2016 and we are still talking about this as something that needs to be done and should have been taken care of years ago? Who's at fault in this war on the American worker? And it's your fault if you try to tell a joke and fall flat on your face. Witness Hillary and the mayor of New York, who could use advice from a pro, where the pros come to work every day with a simple mantra: question everything. I'm Ed Berliner. This is The Hardline for Tuesday, September 12th, 2016.
I'm hundreds of delegates ahead, but the system, folks, is rigged. It's a rigged, disgusting, dirty system. It's a dirty system. And only a non-politician would say it, because I don't care. Look, if it doesn't happen, I'm here for one reason: make America great again. That's the only reason.
I think some people wish it was September, right? Hey, one does not have to look too deep under the surface to gauge where a good part of American voters are heading at the moment. Various polls toss out the numbers with ease. Hardcore supporters on both sides rise up and rail at the findings. This despite being the same followers who just a few months ago were swearing the polls nailed it and spoke to American desires. I'm speaking of the one that spits out around half of the American electorate would be disappointed, maybe even bored, with the matchup between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. This is often called campaign fatigue because we've been at this battle now more months that seem like eons. And the end result of all this? Hold your nose and take your medicine, America. This one's not going to go down easy. Welcome back, the editor-in-chief at Opportunity Lives, the news site dedicated to conservative solutions, John Hart, joined by senior writer for the Weekly Standard, Mark Hemingway. Gentlemen, pleasure to get a chance to talk to you again. All right, let's go ahead and get at it here. Mark, I'm going to throw this at you first. The numbers that we spit out here talked about registered voters split between Clinton and Trump. Quite frankly, there are those people out there looking at these numbers saying, America's just bored at this point. They haven't quite figured out who they want because they don't know if they want anybody.
Yeah, it really is one of these things where Hillary Clinton, just has the inevitability on her side, and clearly Bernie Sanders has the enthusiasm. And the Democratic Party can't decide whether they want to choose between electability or somebody they actually seem to like. And that's kind of where the status quo lays right now.
So, John, are we at the point right now where, as I noted in the intro here, that we have to start looking at this and going, there is a good part of the American electorate who looks at this. They've heard the candidates, they've heard the rhetoric, they've heard the truth, they've heard the sub-truths, if you will, and quite frankly, they're just ready to hold their nose come November?
Well, I think they are, Ed. I think the problem is on the Democrat side is obvious. Hillary Clinton is a retread. We know the Clinton brand. We know what the Clintons are going to offer. There's nothing new. There's nothing exciting. Bernie Sanders is interesting to Democrats. But when you open the hood, his policies are all socialism. And socialism didn't work very well in the last century. It's not going to work very well this century. And with Trump Trump is a novelty. But months ago I described Trump and his campaign as like fair food. At the state fair you go, you have funnel cakes, you have cotton candy. It's exciting. But the moment you get on the roller coaster, it doesn't feel so good. So I think we're at the point now where people have absorbed Trump and his message, and they're getting a little bit tired of it. And I think that's reflected in his campaign, which is he's not been able to close the deal.
Well, all right, John. Well, then let me go to this word then. What about this whole boring idea here and what I mentioned being campaign fatigue? Is it just possible that we are looking at an electorate right now that has heard everything? And at this point, when they hear talk about rigging, talk about fixing, whatever else you want to throw out, talk about a campaign spokesperson who uses the word Gestapo like it's no big deal, that right now people just sit back and go ahead, shock me, I dare you.
No, I think there's a lot of truth to that. Look, we've been covering this race for months, and normal people, educated voters in their daily life, they're not worried about the campaign as much as they are their personal life. They're worried about their income, their family, juggling responsibilities, priorities. And, I've maintained that the real source of the fatigue and frustration among the electorate is that people are just struggling financially. They feel like they can't get ahead. They feel like, Washington keeps spending more than they're bringing in, which is absolutely the case. Wages have flatlined and been stagnant, where government spending has grown 3 times the rate of inflation for the past 20 years. So there's a real frustration. And I think what average people want are real solutions and real answers to these problems.
Okay, now that's fair. Let me stop you there and let me go to Mark for a second here. Mark, because we keep hearing from people now that there is a manic push by some of the candidates as we head towards November. We're heading towards New York, Pennsylvania, California. All right, so let's then extrapolate here. In this manic push, Mark, what do we expect to hear? Will we hear anything different from any one of the candidates that we have heard up to now, or is it just going to be more retread?
Yeah, I think that's the big problem here. I think it is going to be more retread, and I think what John was saying about people having concerns about their own problems is the one thing that candidates in this race haven't been addressing. I mean, if you look at the Democratic side, I mean, the things that they are talking about, raising the minimum wage, free education, free healthcare. I mean, this is straight out of the leftist playbook from 50 years ago. Never mind that there's very little evidence that these ideas are workable. And on the Republican side, I think the Republicans actually do have some good ideas, but they've been so buried in this clash of personalities brought on by Donald Trump that it's been all about some weird alpha dogging, display. And they haven't gotten into any real substance because Trump is incapable of ever discussing substance on policy issues. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the reason why people have so much fatigue. They want answers, they want solutions, and they want policies and ideas conveyed to them in ways that they can get excited about, and they are not getting that from either side of this race.
Okay, so if they wanted something new, there's always been this outside chance, well, always, I mean the last few weeks actually, it seems like years at this point, the way we talk about this every single day, that Paul Ryan would actually get in the race. Just a hint, maybe, that they could convince him. Ryan held his press conference today, ruled it out, said, I'm not running, don't talk to me, and he had some very direct words for the delegates at the convention. Here we go.
If no candidate has a majority on the first ballot, I believe that you should only choose from a person who has actually participated in the primary. Count me out. I simply believe that if you want to be the nominee for our party, to be the president, you should actually run for it. I chose not to do this. Therefore, I should not be considered, period, end of story.
Okay, John, two-part question. One, do you believe him that if called, he would not answer the call? And two, if he's talking about only going for the people who are there right now running for president, that leaves out a lot of speculation here. John, what's going to happen here? You, me, and everybody else, we're going to have to stop speculating here about who's going to actually sneak it at the last moment. It'll cost us millions of dollars and thousands of lives.
You bet. Well, the answer is we don't know. I think Ryan has slammed the door shut as much as he can, but there are forces outside of his control that are going to continue to talk about this. And again, the reason that's the case is what Mark just said is, look, people want solutions, they want answers. And Paul Ryan represents a politician who's been able to speak to those issues in a way that makes sense, that's accessible, that is compelling. He has an upward mobility agenda. He's talking about tax reform in a meaningful way, regulatory reform, national security, the Constitution. He has a great agenda. And that's really, again, what the hunger is people want answers to the problems that they're feeling in their daily life. And Paul Ryan represents a problem solver. So that should be a clue to the people in the race, Cruz, Trump, Kasich, to focus the message in that way. And quick note on this idea that the system is rigged is the problem is not the system is rigged, it's that Trump's campaign is a wreck. And there's nothing about the system today that's been preventing Trump from wrapping up the nomination. And only Trump is to blame for his inability to get the delegates he needs to win the nomination. There's no conspiracy, there's no establishment meeting behind the curtain conspiring to stop him. Only Trump is to blame for his own self-inflicted wounds at this point.
Mark, let's take that a step further. Isn't it fair to say that all the candidates, all these campaigns, they listen, they hear something. It is the shiny thing. Suddenly Donald Trump throws out rigging and fixing. It's like a pair of keys. Somebody's just jiggling in front of their eyes and going, here, look here, because here we got today. Hillary Clinton's press secretary remarked it's Bernie Sanders who's trying to rig the system by attempting to court superdelegates currently allied with Hillary Clinton. That's all it is. We're picking up on keywords here, and we're making sound bites at this point, because I haven't talked to anybody yet, Mark, not one person, who says there's even a shred of evidence about any sort of rigging or fixing. Am I missing something?
No, I don't think you are. Although, when we talk about rigging the primaries, we have to understand that on both sides of the aisle, at the state level, we have this incredible mismatch of rules that, work out in all sorts of weird ways. I mean, for instance, in Missouri, Donald Trump barely got more than Ted Cruz did in the popular vote, and yet walked away with something like 20 more delegates out of the state because he just barely beat him out in the popular vote. Does that mean the system of Missouri was rigged in ways that benefited Donald Trump? Well, I don't know. If you're Ted Cruz, you might feel that way too. But those are the rules, and those are the established rules. So I think that the talk of rigging, especially on the Republican side, is just ridiculous. Trump is complaining because Ted Cruz's campaign is just flat out organized him at the state level and picked up all these delegates by, looking at the local rules and going in there to the state conventions and other things and picking up more delegates. On the Democratic side, that's kind of a different question. Not that it really affects the results thus far, but the entire superdelegate process where they just let a bunch of party insiders count as delegates, I would argue that system is rigged. Now, whether or not that really matters here, because Hillary Clinton has won more delegates and won more votes.
Well, yeah, but you're right. The system may be rigged. The system may be rigged, but it's not like somebody is sneaking behind the back door right now and taking care of everything in the shadow of night. That's just not happening.
But you also have to remember that, for instance, in 2008, Hillary Clinton got more votes than Obama did in the Democratic primary and still didn't win the nomination because of the way the delegate rules are.
Look, so I'll tell you this much, Mark, and I'm out of time, but I got to tell you both this. I've talked to some people, political operatives, veterans, who have said to me, nobody's fixing anything because the people here, none of them are smart enough to do it right now. That's the next question that we're going to have to look at. Mark Hemingway, John Hart, gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. Talk to you soon. Hey, when does the call for equal pay for equal work fall on deaf ears? It might be right after this break. Next on the Hardline.